Hey, future lawyer. Welcome to the LSAT Simplified podcast presented by Hey Future Lawyer, where we talk about all things LSAT, law school admissions, and otherwise. If you want to check out our free LSAT course, go to heyfuturelawyer.com to sign up for a free account today. Welcome, folks. So today we have a fun agenda. First off, we're going to be talking about LSAT reading comprehension, how to do it, why it's simple, and basically just how you should approach RC. That should only take, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 minutes. We'll see. And that really is all you need to know about reading comp other than going to practice. It's not some giant secret of tricks and incantations you need to do this test properly. You just need to know a few things. So we're going to hit those. We then have a few email questions I'm going to hit on. I have an email about burnout, as well as a list of things to avoid in your personal statement from one of our favorite LSAT goofballs. So we're going to read through and see how those tips hold up. We're then going to talk about the timeline of applying this fall. As of recording this, it is August, the end of August, which means applications open in a few days because they open on September 1st for most schools. That being said, if you're still studying for the LSAT, which presumably is why you're listening to this podcast, I guess some of you might be listening even after being done with the LSAT, but presumably most of you are studying. That means you're in kind of a pickle because applications are open and applying later does hurt. So we're going to hit on what that means for your timeline. And then I have a list of questions that we can go through. Let's say we crank through those things really fast. I don't know that we're going to crank through these things really fast. We'll just see how timing goes. But should we speed through, we're then going to just take some kind of broad questions. So first off, reading comprehension. For those of you that aren't familiar, reading comprehension is 1/3 of your scored LSAT score. You have logical reasoning, obviously, which are little arguments. You then have reading comprehension, which is 4 passages that are not terribly long. People often say those are super long, they're super nasty, which is only true in comparison to logical reasoning. When you take a reading comp passage compared to a book, it's nothing. It is maybe a page. Now, it is a dense page. These reading comp passages are meant to be confusing. They have really poorly worded sentences. They will often go over 40 to 50 words within a single sentence, which is terrible writing. LSAT reading comprehension is a great way to not write. If you were looking to train yourself, like, hey, how am I going to be a really bad, unclear, and confusing writer? Studying LSAT reading comprehension would be a great step, which makes it hard for you to read. And that's the purpose. They're trying to make it convoluted. They're trying to make it badly written. The test is not tricky with the ideas. The test is trying to trick you with the reading and seeing if people will wave the white flag and power through. Because the most common mistake people make on reading comprehension is being a little like train engine that just chugs through, like chugga, 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 no stopping. I'm just going to plow through. Because plowing through, while you finish the passage, what you don't get is the comprehension, because the comprehension is the whole point. If you just read a sentence, you're like, wow, that's crazy. I didn't really get it, but I'm on a time standardized test, so I got to keep reading. You've now laid a shaky foundation. And anything you build upon that foundation with future sentences is going to be very bad. So the advice that most people need to hear on reading comprehension is that, yes, this test is under timed conditions, but you have to treat it like it's not. You have to do this to understand, not to finish. Because when you try to finish, sure, you'll finish the passage, you'll answer all the questions, but you're going to fuck them all up because you didn't understand anything. Whereas if you take your time to understand, for one, you're going to get better at comprehending because as you go, you will get better at breaking these sentences down just through exposure. And then second, you're actually going to get the questions right, because what you'll find is that when you actually understand the passage, the questions make sense. There is direct textual support for all the right ones. And so often in a reading comp explanation, which you can access at heyfuturelawyer.com, I will point to an explanation and say, they didn't say that. And it's not, there's no more explanation than that. It's just like, that was not in our passage. I don't know why you picked that answer. They asked, what did our author say? Answer choice B, as in boy, doesn't say that. Like, it was not said. So it's often, I'd say, frustrating to people that haven't understood, because they're like, what do you mean they didn't say that? I'm like, well, what I mean is that that wasn't in our passage. And all these questions on reading comprehension ask you what was in the passage. And this is a perfectly great explanation to people that read. To people that didn't read it, they get confused. They're like, why is it not B? It's like, that seems reasonable. But that's not the question. It's not, does it seem reasonable? It is, did they say that? So the actionable advice on reading comp is read gooder or better, depending on how much of an English speaker you are. I like gooder. Gooder is a fun adjective. Anyway, the point is that reading better truly is your obstacle in the LSAT. It is not that these questions are tricks. They're not tricks. They're very straightforward, actually. It's that they feel not straightforward because the reading is really hard. It is very dense and it is confusing. But when you understand, these are not hard questions. They're very straightforward. So it's like, okay, Ben, thank you for yelling at me and saying I'm illiterate and I don't know how to read. That's very actionable advice. I'm kidding. It's not actionable advice. So what is the actionable advice? Well, the actionable advice is that you have to be an active reader. Now at Hey Future Lawyer, we have 3 questions that we use for active reading. And these 3 questions are not a checklist you have to use. If you are anywhere below, like say a 155, you should be implementing these, because I guarantee you are not doing this to the level you should be. But after every sentence, at least every sentence, often after a single clause, because like we talked about, reading comp is often like 50-word sentences, which is so much to chew on. So let's say you read a clause and it's 25 words where they say like, my uncle went to war in World War I, which was a war between Germany set off by the Archduke of Frankfurt. It's like you should pause. Like we haven't technically gotten to the verb of that sentence, or maybe we have. It depends on how the sentence concludes. But there's already so much there. It's like, okay, so your uncle went to war. What does that tell us? Well, maybe your family values military service. What happened to him? Was he in the Air Force? Was he in the Navy? Did he die? Like there's a lot of things that could happen. So if you're having that process of like, okay, what does that tell us? You're in a great spot. But a lot of people just kind of zone out and their eyes go over the words, but they do not understand. They're not thinking. And so just slowing down after a clause and giving yourself a moment to breathe is truly the number one piece of advice I can give most of you. Now, I have 3 questions for this. The first off is, what did they say? And in this, you want to translate the complicated sentences into ideas that you could repeat to a friend. If you could not take what they said and say it to your mom, your roommate, your friend, you do not understand it. You may have heard the words, but you did not understand. And this is not a reading test, as in, can your eyes recognize words? This is a reading test, as in, can you get the ideas behind the words? So that's the first thing you want to translate in terms of like, what did they say? Second, what do you think? If they're taking a stance, like, do you think that's interesting? When you hear that someone's uncle went to World War I, is that crazy? I mean, I would say it's pretty crazy given that we're in the year 2025. I'm like, how old is your family? How is your uncle going to war? That's wild. And assuming that you're reading something from the present day, you should have that thought, which is like, ooh, holy fuck, are you old as shit? Or is your uncle, like, I don't know, it's like, are you confused about your world wars? I mean, even if it was World War II, that'd be really old. Anyway, so you should have that thought process. And if you're not, once again, that means you're not comprehending. It means your eyes are just skimming the word, which ain't good enough. And then finally, where are they going with this? So I started to do that by saying, was our uncle in the military, in terms of the Navy, the Air Force, the Army? You could also think about like, did he do anything heroic? Did he win a medal? Did he have PTSD? Like there's all these things that could be true of someone who's gone to war. And if you can't think of those things, once again, it comes back to you're not understanding. Too many of you do not understand what you read. It is not sexy advice to say this. Hardly anyone says this, but the reason you are not good at the LSAT is that you are not a good reader, at least not to the level that lawyers are. Lawyers are incredibly precise. The LSAT is child's play compared to what you guys are going to do. This is your chance to hone this skill, which is going to matter. I often get in hot water when I say this, but when I look at someone who cannot succeed on the LSAT, I look at someone who I would not trust with contracts. If I were to hire a lawyer, I would not hire someone who could not do well on the LSAT because they don't have a command of the English language that I would require for someone to look through contracts for me. Because the LSAT is play. This is your chance to like fuck up and there's no consequences. Like, oh, I'm not that good of a reader. But here's the thing, that's not a problem because it's your chance to learn. But if you don't handle it, like when people say, I scored a 150, now I'm having a successful legal career, I'm like, not for me, you're not. Because when I hire lawyers, which I occasionally do, not often, but we have contracts and shit. We're a business. So we go through lawyers occasionally. I don't ask people's LSAT score, but if I did, and they say they got a low score, I would be fucking concerned and I would probably go to a different lawyer because the more exposure I get to the LSAT, the more I realize this is a skills-based test. And these skills are incredibly central to the skills I want my lawyer to have, which is can you read and can you react? And if you can't, you're going to have an issue being my lawyer because I'm going to fire your ass. Okay. That's besides the point. It is meant to be encouraging though, like because people do say like the LSAT's not relevant. Yeah, I've not heard that argument well constructed. It almost always boils down to I didn't do well on the LSAT, therefore LSAT bad instead of like I didn't have the skills. It's one of those things where people don't often have introspection when they fail to measure up. It's so much easier to blame it on something than to take the responsibility. And I get it. We all fail at things. Life involves a lot of failure. I've failed at a million things in my life. But it's one thing to take accountability and say, what could I have done better? Or maybe I'm not that good at that skill. It's another thing to actually just blame it and be like, oh, that's stupid. And it kind of gets to, I mean, I'd say the number one trait, and this is a digression from reading comp, but the number one trait I see in people that succeed on the LSAT versus those that don't is mentality. And it's just that. It's not how smart you are. It's not what schools you went to. It's do you think you can do this? The people who come in and tell me I'm going to figure this out, like, where do I start? They tend to crush it. The people who come in hemming and hawing and like, oh, that's just bullshit, man. Like this ain't nothing to do with a lawyer. It's like, well, you're going to fail because if you have that mentality, you are for sure going to get evidence. Because the thing about the LSAT is it's a test of failure. So you're going to get failure either way. And what happens is people that expect to succeed, they view those failures as chances to get better. They're like, oh, I missed that question. I didn't understand something. I can get better. That's the people that will succeed because they take it as a growth opportunity. And through repetition, they figure out their issues and their deficiencies. The people that want the LSAT to be the big bad mean wolf, they view every question they get wrong as reinforcement of this test being bullshit. They're like, oh, it was definitely A, the test says it's B, it's arbitrary, it's not real, this has nothing to do with being a lawyer. And in doing so, they're able to find reinforcing evidence for their false belief. Their false belief is that the LSAT is bullshit, and they're reinforcing it by the fact that they're missing questions, but they're actually missing what's really happening, which is that they're not good at the skills. And instead of that recognition of, I can get better at this, I can be more precise, I can be a better reader, instead they take from it, this is bullshit, therefore, like, I'm bad at it, therefore it's bullshit. It's actually kind of circular reasoning if you really think about it, which is, this is bullshit, therefore the test is bullshit. But anyways, I do see it a lot, and I will occasionally talk to someone via email or DM or something, and I can just tell it's like, you're gonna fail. And it's nothing to do with you, it's everything to do with how you view the world. Because, I mean, not to get all woo-woo, I'm not exactly a hippie person, but like, you guys should really understand that your perspective on the world influences your reality more than you think. What you think is possible is often possible. What you think is impossible is also probably impossible. Like, it sounds so dumb to say, like, whether you think you can or can't, you're probably right. But there's so much truth to that. And so the mindset that people come to me with is truly the number one predictor. I mean, secondary to that, what else would I say? I mean, growing up in strong education. I'm not going to pretend that growing up in like a high income zip code doesn't hurt. It certainly helps because you go to better schools, and people's early childhood experiences often, make their educational background stronger. I read a shit ton as a kid. Like, I read so many books. I was number one in the leaderboard of my elementary school for AR points. For those of you that don't know, AR points, they were like these little, it was like a prize system they had in my elementary school where you would read a book, then you would go take a quiz, and depending on how well you did on the quiz, you would get points, and you could redeem those points for silly stuff like scooters, or, I mean, it was kind of like an arcade, like those sorts of prizes. You can get like, what else could you get? Maybe candy. I don't even remember. The point is that I was number one in my whole little elementary school of like 700 kids. And I think that habit has a lot to do with why I am a good reader nowadays. Is like, or not a good reader, but good at the LSAT. I don't even read as much as I should. Like, I maybe read 30 to 40 books a year. So like, I don't read that much. But, and also for a lot of years, like 30 to 40 books, that's crazy. It's really not. Like lawyers read so much. You guys, like, some of the people I've had, like one of the people I have who was a former LSAT tutor for us, she's now going to Big Law. She, I think, said she read like 3 books a week. Even in law school, I think she said she read a ton for pleasure. So anyway, I'm not saying that you have to be like a library gold card member to be a good LSAT taker. But if the idea of reading books, like, I hate that, reading's the worst. I don't know. Part of me wonders, it's like, why are you doing this? Like, lawyers read a shit ton. It's like all they do. Anyways, we've really digressed from reading comp. So let me rein myself in, get the lasso, catch him, pull him in. All right, where were we? So we were on reading comp. So yeah, I mean, the other thing with reading comp, and I was starting to hit on this, is that you guys lose the battle in the passage, not in the questions. The questions are easy when you read properly. I mean, with exception, there are a few really nasty ones. Like, I'm not going to say that there's never a hard LSAT question, because there is, but not usually. Usually they're pretty easy, and it's just that you didn't understand it up front. Like, sure, take a 27 section test or 27 question section. Are there 2 to 3 questions that are like legitimately hard questions, even if you've understood? Like, sure, they do hit on nuances sometimes. But there are 24 questions where it's just, that's what they said, and they didn't say that. And until you are scoring 170, I don't want to hear about how the LSAT is really hard and arbitrary, because it's not. If you're scoring 150, you are missing the low-hanging fruit. And yes, to get to a 180, there are genuinely very difficult questions. I did one yesterday. It was a logical reasoning question, but it was one where it's like, wow, that was a giant, like, we had to really work to make the right answer work. It was, what was it? Prep test. It was one of the 140s. It was on Mate. I think it was either 142 or 143 is on Mate, and the right answer was very convoluted. I missed it on the first go around. I didn't get the question wrong because I crossed off all 5, but on a second pass, I was like, oh, I see how that works. You have to make a few connections to make this correlation. And for those of you that don't know what the question I'm talking about, so you're like, Ben, what the fuck are you talking about? But for those of you that do, pull up the Mate question from prep test. I want to say it's either 142 or 143. It's either section 2 from 142 or section 3 from 143. Those are the tests I was working from yesterday. And it is a very hard question, and it also makes perfect sense. And those are the questions that separate the 175s from the 180s. And also, there are all the easy questions. So like, sure, is that question a mind bender? And people can point to that and be like, the LSAT's so fucking hard. How would I ever be expected to know that? Like, fair, but also that's one question of 25. The other 24, like, so many of them are just like obviously the right answer. And it's like, there's nothing even in contention if you understood this. So what I will say is that the LSAT's not that hard. Well, reading comp. The reading comp is not that hard when you understand, but you have to fight that battle. If you don't fight your battle in preparation, when you're reading through it, you're going to lose in the questions. It's like if you were doing, I mean, it's really like sports. And I know that you all are not always the most athletic crew. I'm kidding. I'm sure some of you are phenomenal athletes. I know I've had actually a lot of really cool athletes in LSAT class. Lots of Division I athletes for what it's worth. Shout out me, do a little name dropping. I'm kidding. None of you would ever recognize their names. Not to dunk on my Division I athletes. For all of you, it's just, you guys are like beach volleyball and shit, so like no one knows what the fuck, like, what your name is. I couldn't name one beach. Actually, no, that's not true. There's that woman Misty May, I think. Anyway, that's a total digression. The point is, is that in sports, you don't win or lose the game on the day of the game. You win or lose the game in the months and years leading up to that moment. Did you train your body to adequately perform? Did you get the intellectual processing to know what you do in certain situations? Like, not only are you a freak athlete, but do you know the proper move? I mean, this is a huge thing. For those of you who don't know, I played back in my day. I was a lacrosse player, and I was always probably not the best athlete. Is the best way. Like, it sounds harsh to say like that, but like I was kind of small. Like when I was in high school, I was maybe like 150 pounds. Like I was like 5'10", but I was like pretty skinny, so I could get thrown around. But I was really good at positioning and like knowing where to be. So I would often just kind of get lost. And for those of you that know lacrosse, I was like kind of an off-ball player. Like they wouldn't put me on the first midi line, but I would be on the power play and everything. And anyways, or the EMO if you're a lacrosse player. Although to be fair, the PLL calls it a power play. Anyway, the point is that like I had that skill, and that was a skill based on preparation. Same thing in fighting. It's like before you step in the ring for a UFC match or MMA, you don't win that day. You win, and did you train hard leading up to it? Did you practice? Are you going to kick ass? And then that day is just the culmination of everything that happened. I mean, it was a long, drawn out analogy, but the whole point is that the battle is won before you ever step into the ring. And our situation on the LSAT is in the passage. That is your battle. Did you win or did you lose? Too many of you think the question is the battle. It's not. It's just the evaluation. That's game day. But the preparation, the practice, the blood, sweat, and tears, that is in the passage. Are you reading? Are you digesting? So too many of you rush through that to get to the game, but then you fall apart in the game because you never practiced. You never got what was happening. You don't understand what they're talking about. Because these questions are so bad when you know what they said, and they are so tempting when you don't know what they said. If they are talking about how the Aztecs were like a crazy advanced civilization, that's a very specific claim. And then many of the wrong answers will say the Aztecs were religious or the Aztecs were not advanced. Things that are fundamentally antithetical to what they told us, which is that they are highly advanced. I don't mean to say religion and highly advanced are antithetical. What I mean to say is that they're not the same thing. And as such, when they say they were highly advanced as our main point, but then when they give you wrong answers that say they were not very advanced, or they were really good at agriculture, or they were religious. These things look tempting to the skimmers because they see the word Aztec. They're like, the Aztec civilization was, and they're like, we did talk about the Aztecs. And all 5 answers will say that. So it's not good enough. But if you go the next layer, which is not that much harder to go, it's not hard to get that they were technologically advanced, then the right answer jumps out and the wrong ones look so wrong. Because when you get to the one about religion, you're like, we weren't talking about religion. When you get to the one about agriculture, you're like, it wasn't just about agriculture. It's about all sorts of things. So do the work up front. And when you do the work up front, the wrong answers are obviously wrong and the right ones are obviously right. If it doesn't feel like that, if it feels like there's 5 good answers and they're throwing you in a blender, you can't tell the difference, it means you're not doing the preparation. You are losing the battle in the gym. You are never, and then when you make it to game day on the questions, you're not prepared. So you get punched in the face, you bleed into your mouth, and it feels like you're overwhelmed because you are overwhelmed because you weren't ready. So prepare, and when you prepare, it's actually pretty smooth on game day. And by game day, I mean the questions. It was kind of a drawn out analogy. Oh yeah. So that was point 1 of literally 9 points I have on reading comprehension. So oh man, I'm bad at this. And I have a meeting in 40 minutes, so I got to keep cranking. So never mind, that was point 2. So the next point is to highlight and note take. There's different takes on this. Some people think it's really helpful. Others think it's a time sink. I'll say, as a general rule, I think it's a time sink. I think it's a waste of your time. With the caveat that I'm not dogmatic. If you have some highlighting structure or note taking that works for you, I am open to you doing it with the giant caveat that most of you do it because you don't understand, and it's an excuse not to understand. So my general rule is still don't do it. My highest scorers almost never notate anything. Although, if you want to, I'm not here to say you can't do it. I'm just here to say you should really intentionally evaluate what is your process, what are you noting for? Because a lot of people are like, I underline important shit. And it's like, well, how do you know it's important? You don't know what's important on reading comp until you've read the whole thing. So when you're in paragraph 1 and you're underlining the thesis statement, you are full of shit because you can't know what the thesis statement is until you read all of the paragraphs. It's like in The Simpsons. They'll often start with like Homer going to Bart's baseball game or something. And then Bart breaks his leg. And then the whole thing will be like about the American healthcare system. If you had underlined the paragraph, or not the paragraph, but the sentence that says the Springfield Isotopes are playing the town next door on Tuesday, it seemed very important, but it started about the baseball game. You would have missed the whole point because it wasn't about that. It then pivots to the healthcare system. So when you underline shit in the first paragraph, you don't know if it's important. You cannot know if it's important looking forwards. You can only know if it's important looking backwards. So when I talk to someone and they're like, oh, that's the thesis statement, I'm like, oh my God, that's literally impossible. Are you a psychic? Because I, as an LSAT expert who has done all of these passages, I don't know what the thesis statement is. which for first off, they don't tend to exist. They don't usually just spoon feed it to you. This is not a 5th grade essay. This is LSAT reading comprehension. So they're not just gonna be like, oh, here's the main point. Here you go. It's really easy. You have to understand. They're not looking to give you like, oh, it's the last sentence of the last paragraph, therefore it's the main point. Because like sometimes yes, but often no. Because you guys are not children. You shouldn't need a thesis statement to understand what the main point is. You should be able to read and extract the ideas. That is what the LSAT is testing. If you can't do that, that is the point. They're trying to weed out people that can't do that with their heads, as opposed to just being able to underline a sentence and be like, that's the main point. And people teaching you things to underline and things to like find the thesis in the passage, they're not telling you the truth, which is that this is not a test that is meant to be gimmicked. This is a test that is meant to be obliterated through comprehension. And there are no shortcuts. People can teach you shortcuts, but they don't fucking work. There are no indicator words on logical reasoning. There are no thesis statements. I mean, yes, occasionally there are. Can thus indicate a conclusion? Sure, it can. But to rely on it is to wave the white flag and say, I'm not going to do well on this test. I'm not going to go to a good law school, or at least the top of the law schools, because it's not good enough. The people that belong at those schools and the people that get to those schools actually understand. And to look for the thesis statement in reading comp, or to look for the conclusion indicator, those aren't the people ending up at the top schools, because it doesn't get you a good enough LSAT score. You actually need to understand if you want to crush it. Okay, so yeah, what are the things people often do? I mean, the common pitfalls of highlighting and diagramming is one, marking everything. People like, I'll see ones and like literally every sentence is highlighted. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, maybe there's a reason for it, and I'm not here to prescribe what you should or should not do. But what I will say is there's a pretty inverse relationship between lots of highlighting and doing well. People tend to, mark things up when they're not understanding as a way to avoid the battle that needs to be fought. Instead of fighting the battle of, wow, that's a dense sentence, I need to break it down. It's a lot easier to throw in like pink, yellow, and orange and be like, that's crazy. And it's like, well, yeah, but like you still don't know what it said. So like it's pretty colors, I guess, but that's not the question. This is not an art project. This is an answer the multiple choice questions project. Second, like I talked about, important points. And then further, people often do it to like be doing something so that they're like reading actively. It's like, oh, it's an assignment, but you don't need an assignment. The assignment is understand. So work on that mental process. I mean, a lot of you just need to see it demonstrated. I talk through reading comprehension passages in our free curriculum on heyfuturelawyer.com. I go through them on prep test 123. I think there's 8 passages that I break down in completion for you don't have, all you need is a free account on our website. You do not need a paid account to access it. And so just that, if you watch those 8, should revamp your reading comp. I genuinely don't think you can watch all 8 of those and like not crush reading comp if you actually take from them. I mean, you can just like watch them in the background while you shop on Amazon, and that won't help you. But if you like actually sit down and like watch it, how has Ben doing these? I think you'll see like you actually can break these down. You can understand them. And then yes, the questions are pretty easy. So yeah, if you do want to highlight, there are a few things you can note. So like you can note the author's opinion. If they editorialize and say like, this is a good thing, or this is a bad thing, fortunately, unfortunately, stuff like that notes that they're giving an opinion. And that does often, one, align with our main point, because, our author is the one writing the passage. Therefore, their opinions are often what they think, which is the main point. Second, the LSAT does like to ask about their opinion. So they'll ask like the author would agree with which of the following, and then the direct textual evidence can be used for that. Typically, the author's opinion is only explicitly said 2 or 3 times throughout the passage. Further, it's not that hard to find if you understand it. Like, and this is why I don't recommend people do it. So like, oh, that is useful. Why not notate it? It's like, well, you don't need to. It's 16 sentences, and if you actually read to understand, it's really easy to remember where they said things. These are not long treatises that you have to like have little stickers. It's like the books from middle school where you would annotate them with like your little what are they called? Sticky notes, and you'd have like pink and yellow and shit. I never did that. I was the kid who always had his book destroyed in his backpack because I was not a great student. Anyway, the point is that these are not long. There's no need for some complex system. If you understood what they said, you can be like, oh yeah, they said that in the second paragraph, or at least they said it around the middle of the passage. You can search for words using their search tool and it will pop up. Okay. And then the other thing I've seen people do with success is just to write a few notes after each paragraph. I'm not an advocate of this, but I've seen high scorers do this several times. So I at least give it credence to that. It might have validity. Basically what they will do is they'll just write like a quick note after a paragraph. So if it was like the Aztecs are high tech, I might say like Aztecs are high tech. And then if the next paragraph talks about examples, like their bow and arrows and like agriculture might be like examples of high tech. So it shouldn't even be a complete sentence. I don't even know that you should have a verb in it. If you have a verb, I think you're doing too much. It should just be like Aztecs, high tech. But if it takes you 5 seconds and it helps you form a mental map, it's fine. I will note you absolutely do not need to do this. This is not a prescription. This is like what is kind of acceptable. So like what's acceptable is have like 1 or 2 things you're looking for. And then further, like maybe writing a note or 2 in the margins or on a piece of paper. What is not acceptable is having some like complex system where you're notating every sentence. If you're doing that, you're doing too much. You just don't have the time to do that. So yeah. Anyway, that's highlighting and notating. Let's see what else we got. Man. So Next up is the main point. The LSAT main point is incredibly powerful. Understanding the main point of a passage on the LSAT, it anchors your grasp of the entire text and shapes how you approach the questions that follow. It reveals the author's core purpose, which is the why, not the what, but the why. Not Aztecs, that's the what. The why is that the Aztecs were high tech. That's the why. And that is their main point. In our hypothetical passage, that does not exist. So you want to get that why, not the what. And further, once you can get that main point, you will be amazed how many of the questions will refer back to it. Because often they will ask about the main point, about half of the questions. So on LSAT Reading Comp, out of 27 questions, I would wager about 13 to 14 per section hit directly on that main point, which might sound astonishing to those of you that have not realized this as you study. But once you start seeing it, it's hard to unsee. It's like, holy shit, it's all about the main point. They're always just coming back to it. When they ask you about the role of a paragraph, it is in relation to that main point. When they ask you about the role of a sentence, it usually refers back to the main point. Like, obviously context matters and there can be exceptions. So this is where I have to be careful and say like it always comes back, because it doesn't always come back. There are little details, but typically speaking, most of the questions are going to refer back to this kind of North Star. So I recommend it being your North Star. Like, this is your guide light as you go through the LSAT. It will help you see the test so much clearer. And further, you can get immediate feedback in terms of how well you are predicting it. Because after you read a reading comp passage, I want you to predict the main point. You do not need to write it down, but you can. If it helps you to note it out, sure, write it down. It'll take you like 10 seconds, and it is the best 10 seconds you can invest if that's what it takes you. I personally make a mental note, or at least that's how I did. Nowadays, I only do them in class, so I just write them on the screen. But back when I took it myself, I would just mentally note what the main point was. And here's the thing. You're like, okay, Ben, but I might suck at predicting main points. And the answer is yes, you might. You might be really bad at it. But you're going to get better. And here's why. Every single time you predict the main point, the LSAT is then going to ask you what the main point is. And they will tell you what they think the answer is, which means they are telling you what they thought the main point was. So you can compare and contrast what you thought the main point was to what they thought the main point was. And as you do that, you're going to get better at predicting. So through osmosis and through repetition, you will get better at predicting the main points to where you are an LSAT main point predicting machine. Once you've done enough passages, if you haven't done enough passages, that's your problem. You just got to do more. A lot of you just need to do more LSAT. Occasionally I talk to someone, they're like, I've done 5 LSATs. Am I ready? It's like, well, I mean, it depends. Like, do you want to start your legal career on your best start? If so, no. If you just want to crank because grandma told you to, then sure, get going. But that's a whole separate point. We're not going to do the whole digression on why not taking the LSAT seriously is baby shit. I do that most episodes, so we're not going to do that today. Okay, so yeah, with that, you can identify the main point. Further, the main point often aligns with what our author is saying. After all, they're the one writing the passage. So when you identify the author's perspective, that gives you a pretty good idea of what their purpose is and what their main point is. And further, main point, purpose, like the goal of the passage, all that shit, it's all the same thing, which is why do they write it? It's one central question, and they're going to ask you about it in all sorts of ways. If they ask you, what would the passage be titled? Also, the main point, the Aztecs and their high tech. That would be the main point of that one, or that would be the title. The main point would be the Aztecs are high tech. What would the purpose be? To explain the technology of the Aztecs. So sure, they ask it in a million different ways, but it's all coming back to that same point, which is the Aztecs are high tech. So yeah, further, there are a few tips you can have as you answer actual main point questions. The first of which is that too narrow is a problem. So for example, let's say the Aztecs were high tech and it was like they had really high tech bows and arrows. That could be true. But then if the main point says the Aztecs had really high tech bows and arrows, that would be false because that's not the main point. That is a supporting detail supporting the broader point that their technology is advanced. So when they over isolate on one point, that's a problem. Further, if they have new info. So if they say the Mayans, it's like, well, we didn't talk about the Mayans. We talked about the Aztecs. And untrained LSAT people often fall for this because it's a very subtle shift, but it has all the meaning on the LSAT. It is all the difference. So you got to be very careful not to fall for those shifts. Okay, cool. What else do we got? But yeah, then in contrast to the main point questions, there are detailed questions. Detailed questions are easier, just to put it like very candid. The detailed questions are like, hey, which of the following philosophers did the author not, or like which of the following technologies did the author not mention in support of the Aztecs being high tech? And I might say like the bows and arrows, the aqueducts, the hunting traps, the like religious pyramids. And you just have to find the one they didn't say. These ones need to be the background of your, or not the background, the backbone of your LSAT score because they are too easy. They just say it at one point and they don't say the others. Or if they say except, it's the opposite. They'll say 4 of them and they do not say 1. These ones you really should not miss because they're too easy. All you have to do is just make sure that you're picking the one they said. And yeah, further, lazy reading will often have you pick a close but ultimately incorrect answer. So you gotta be careful, be precise. And yeah, you can always check back. I'm a big fan of checking back. A lot of people are like, if you check back, you didn't read. I believe the human memory is funky. I think for the big picture, you shouldn't check back. Like if you need to check back for the main point that indicates you don't understand, Because it's the main point. It's like, did you just spend time reading it? If you read it, you should say the main point. If it's a specific detail, it's like, well, I don't memorize all 18 sentences. So checking back is very within reason for me, because it's like, I can misremember things. I misremember things all the time. I'm sure, like, we all do. We're humans. So for a quick detail, it's like, yeah, it's good to triple check, or at least not triple check, double check. Just be like, is my memory correct? For the main point, don't double check. Okay, how are we doing on time? Holy shit. This is the issue with LSAT. It's like, I just talk about this forever, but it's also bad because like I have agendas to get off to. And further, it's about 80% of the knowledge and 20% of the time. Okay, so yeah, next up is reading between the lines. This is where a lot of high scores fuck up, is on logical reasoning on the LSAT. You are very incentivized to be a very active thinker. And in fact, even in our active reading, we talked about how active reading really helps you on the LSAT. Because when you kind of think about what's coming, it helps your comprehension. But here's the issue. When they actually ask you to answer the questions, all that active reading needs to go out the window. You need to now just go back to what do they tell you. So if you pick something that seems reasonable, but they did not say it, that's a problem. And where this most often comes out is on inferred questions. So when they say which of the following can be inferred that the author would agree with, or which of the following can be inferred about some situation, they're not asking you to infer, which people often read as like what was said without being said, what was between the lines. They're asking you what was actually said. And many of the incorrect answers are things that seem implied, which people confuse with inferred, but are not actually inferred. So this is like one of the very few LSAT tricks I actually give people, which is inferred doesn't exist on the LSAT. It is what did they say? And yes, the LSAT uses that word, I'd say, with loosely. They don't use it how we use it in common vernacular. But once you know that, there's no excuse not to miss it. Because like if you miss questions in the past because they said inferred and you read between the lines, like sure, that's a reasonable mistake. I just told you that when they say inferred, they don't mean it. So stop picking answers that are not supported by the text. Once you do that, you're going to start getting those questions right. And so often I'll talk to someone who's scoring like 24, 27 on reading comp, and they're just picking answers. Like they're missing all the inferred questions. I'm like, well, there's your problem. You're reading between the lines. Stop doing that. Okie dokie. What else do we have? Sorry, I'm like out of breath. Not out of breath, just thirsty. But next up, comparative reading. Yes, and comparative reading tends to be shorter. These are the ones where they'll have one topic and two passages on it. And instead of having one long text, you see the two shorter ones on the same topic, but they take different takes or angles to it. There's sometimes debates, sometimes they're just different perspectives on some singular topic. I also say they're generally easier. First off, they're only half as long, so they tend to be easier to read through because it's like, well, there's literally half as many sentences, so they're more straightforward. Second, they have a lot of gimme questions, like those detail ones we talked about, where it really just hinges on who said what. So they'll say like the author of passage A said, but passage B, or the author of passage A, but non-passage B said X, or what do both authors agree on, or what do both authors disagree on? And those are really easy because you're just like, here's where they say it in A, here's what they said in B, that's our answer. Or A says that, but B doesn't, that answers our question. So often there's a lot more kind of fastballs right down the middle that you can just slam out of the park, as opposed to like weird curveballs that like duck out of the zone, which they often have on the harder passages. And not to say that comparative reading is always easier, but it tends to be easier. As a general rule, these tend to be more straightforward. So I'd say the tip on these is one, they're not that hard. And then two, just be very intentional with the questions. Often the questions are like passage A says, but passage B does not. And often people will answer half of the question, which is what passage A says, but then passage B also said it. And the second part of the question was, what did passage B not say? So you got to be careful and make sure you address both parts. And that's where people often fuck up on comparative. Okie dokie, what else do we have? Our final point, I guess, is just reminders. So yeah, I'm just kind of like, if I had to boil this down to 3 points, what would I say? Well, first off, use the main point. The main point is your North Star. Work on predicting it. You will get better at it with time. Second, stick to the text. Do not bring in extra details, even if they seem reasonable. Everything has to come from the words on the page, so watch out for any new information. It is bad. And then finally, practice. These LSAT questions are following a predictable pattern. The more you do, and the more you actively review, the easier it will be. It is hard at first, but consistency will cement your progress and you will get better over time. Alrighty, that was a fun one. So how are we doing on time? Man, I do not have time for the agenda today, but let's keep trying to get through a few more. So I did have an email exchange with someone in class, and I just thought it was worthwhile touching for other people. So what they emailed me was, hey, Ben, and they did not say, I hope you're doing well. So thank you to that person. You just went right into your email, which I love. So shout out to you. Do you have any tips for handling burnout with LSAT prep? Lately, I've noticed my PT sections haven't been going as well, and I'm pretty sure it's from burnout. I've been studying on and off since February and more heavily with Hey Future Lawyer since June. As a full-time employee and mom, my study schedule looks a little different than most, and I think that's part of why I'm feeling it. With my test coming up, I'm starting to get nervous, so any tips or tricks you can share would be greatly appreciated. So yeah, I mean, first off, burnout is hard to address broadly because, and I do ask this person for more information, but as a general rule, burnout can be real. It can also be not real. It really depends on circumstances. So like, were this person studying a crazy amount? Like, yeah, that can be exhausting. There can also be seasons. Like sometimes you do burn yourself out. I've gone through seasons of burnout where it's like I have to work 10 to 12 hours a day, but we're trying to really push to get something done. And that's okay because I know this isn't forever, it's temporary. Now, that being said, I don't mean to prescribe that for everyone. You don't have to do that. And certainly you don't have to do that for the LSAT, in which an hour to two of solid prep a day is sufficient. Typically, where people get burned out on the LSAT is not so much the LSAT studying, but that layered on top of everything else you have in your life. Because I don't think this person's studying 12 hours a day for the LSAT, but if you're studying 2 hours a day and then you have, like, you said you're a mom, you said you're an employee, I imagine that's a lot of stuff going on. You have to sleep, you have to, take care of your kiddos, you have to like do your day job. So all of that compounded on each other can become very exhausting. But let's read on because she gives us some more specifics as opposed to the broad. So she says, with my accommodations, I've been doing 53 minutes a day, then reviewing the questions I missed, plus attending classes in the evening and joining homework sessions whenever my work schedule allows. So I see her in class, which means that I have a pretty good estimation how often she comes. So she comes on Mondays and Thursdays for 2 hours. So that's 2 hours right there. And then I'm going to assume she's also studying those days. So on Mondays, Thursdays, she's studying 3 hours a day. And then she comes to the homework sessions. Those, I think she comes to like 2 to 3 a week, maybe just two. But that's another 2 hours plus, studying each day. And this is someone who I believe is studying basically every day. Like I haven't checked your user data in our database super in depth. But my understanding is you're not one of the people. I often yell in LSAT class at the kiddos and be like, hey, you really should be studying. A lot of you are, trying to be lawyers, but I see your activity on the site. It's like, why the fuck aren't you studying? I don't think you're one of those people. Like when I yell at people, you are actually one of the few that I like. I'm kidding. Not that I like everyone. It's one of the, like, that's the wrong word. What I meant to say is one of the people that like I trust in terms of like what they're telling me. There's a lot of unreliable narrators, just to put it like very lightly. For those of you who are like other LSAT people, because I know some of you listen, shout out to you guys. What up, folks? You guys know what I'm saying. Like the other LSAT people, there's some things that like we're not supposed to say. One of them is that a lot of the failure of our students is on them. Like there are people that are failed by their LSAT prep, and that is for sure a thing. There are also people where it's like I had a consultation today. I don't often do consultations, but occasionally I'll talk to someone. I'm like, you're in a bad path, and I genuinely do want to help people. It's one of my, I'd say, harsher traits, or not harsher. It's bad for me because I end up wasting a lot of time helping people that don't pay me. And I've gotten better about this, but like when someone's really fucking up and I'm like, wow, you really shouldn't do that. I'm going to try to jump on the phone with you just to like talk you out of this, or not talk you out of this, but like give you guidance. And this is someone who I made time for, which like I don't do consults very often, maybe 5 a quarter, so like 20 a year. And she texted me before. She's like, hey, I'm gonna be like, not text, emails me. She's like, I'm gonna be 5 minutes late. And then 20 minutes later, she's like, she didn't get on until 21 minutes after we started, which is fine. Cause like I was gone by that point. I'm not waiting 20 minutes for you. I mean, I left after like 10. I was like, okay, like 5 minutes is one thing, but then you're 5 minutes after you said you were gonna be late. At that point, I'm dipping. And so for those people, it's like I get. And she came to me like, hey, my other tutor sucks. Like, I want to talk to someone new. And it's like, well, your other tutor might suck, but in my very brief interaction with you, you failed to show up and fail. Like you kind of no call and no show, and you did show up 21 minutes late after. It's like you did technically show up, but 21 minutes late is pretty bad. Like just a small rule that like it's fine. She's pre-law. Don't do that in your guys' legal careers. If you're not going to be able to make a meeting on time, talk to someone. And if you're going to be late, tell them the actual approximation. Say, I won't be able to be on until X time. I'm so sorry. I fucked up. I miscalculated my day. If you don't, you could leave a sour taste in someone's mouth. Now, I'm not vindictive. I could be vindictive. I've chosen not to be. It was one of my resolutions a few years ago because I've gotten, personal growth. I'm 25 years old. So we're still, becoming the cat. I guess I'm a cocoon at this point. I was a caterpillar, not quite a butterfly yet, but we're getting there. And the point is, though, it's not everyone's as enlightened as I am. I'm kidding. That was said tongue in cheek for those of you that are like, is this guy a narcissist? Only slightly. But anyway, I do kid. Anyways, the point is that like take shit seriously. So total digression. This person's just saying that she's studying, she's burned out, studying a lot though. And she says, do you have any tips on how I can fine tune my studying? I really want to do my desk, but I feel like test anxiety is starting to get in the way. And so far, it's really hard to give her too much advice. I mean, I'd say aim for 1 to 2 hours a day. I really don't know if she's doing that. And I said, like, if that's 7 days a week, that is a ton. And so then I had her send me screenshots of sections, and I won't share these because it's not important. But what she does share is 2 LR sections. And here's what she has. On this first one, she did all 26 questions, and she missed this questions 5, 6, 10, 11, 14, 16, 18, 21, 23, 24, 25, and 26, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 questions. So my immediate advice there is do fewer questions. Out of the first 15, you missed 5 questions. Those are not that hard, generally speaking. You can figure those out. So your job is start getting the easy ones right. Do not worry about getting to question 26. So here's the thing, you missed the last 4. You got every single one wrong out of the last 4. So instead, spend that time that you're probably spending spinning your wheels on the hardest questions. Instead, invest a little bit more time to get the easy ones right. Question 5 was not hard. Question 6 was not hard. And if you can get those ones right, you're going to do better. So make sure you're getting the easy ones right. And then she sent me another one, which is a good day. On a good day, she missed question 5, 9, 13, 16, 18, 21, and 22. That's still missing 7, and that's a good day. So once again, it's like, hey, if you just slow down and get the first like 15 right, which even on your good day, you missed 3 of them, you're gonna make a lot of progress. So the goal is to play the game you have, not the game you wish you had. The game you wish you had is that you were gonna do all 25 and get them all right. That's the game that I have because I'm good at the LSAT. You are not there yet. And the way you get to be where I am is that you stop missing question 5, you stop missing question 9, you stop missing question 13. You have to own these questions and kick ass when you do them. So start holding yourself to a higher standard, take more time, and that's going to mean you're not going to finish. But that's okay, because when you're finishing right now, you are finishing with low accuracy. Our goal is to get you to high accuracy. You're not going to finish, but then over time, you naturally get better as you get more familiar with the LSAT. So your assignment immediately is slow down and do gooder. You need to get more questions right on the ones you do. Okay, so that's that. Do we have time to rapid fire one? Okay, well, let's rapid fire this things to avoid in your personal statement. I have not been doing a lot of admissions content recently for those of you that have been listening to the pod. I am open to doing more admission stuff. In fact, if you want more admission stuff, just send questions into the podcast, or maybe I'll find some. But because I enjoy doing admission stuff, just to be very candid, we stopped doing it, not because I don't like doing it, but just because we're really trying to focus on LSAT, and it's honestly kind of a distraction. Like, I'm good at admission stuff. In fact, I should make a recap episode of last cycle, because last cycle was insane. We got everyone into such good schools. At least everyone who was worth. I mean, we did. Side note, for those of you that are thinking about doing LSAT or admissions business, do not let people sign up for admissions consulting before they have their LSAT score. Because I did that last year, and that was a total fuck up. Because I got people sign up, and then they maxed out like a 145 on the LSAT because they decided to do LSAT prep elsewhere. And it's like, well, I'm not a miracle worker. I can't get you into law school with a 145. Like, it's just, I don't care how good your essays are. It's like, that's a non-starter. When you have a 3.0 and a 145, it's like, you're not going to get into law school. You need to do better on the LSAT. So I'll include those people in my recap video because I want it to be comprehensive. But I'm going to just give context. So maybe that'll be the podcast next week. Maybe I'll just like throw it up on the whiteboard and talk through all like 25 people very abstractly, no names, but just like numbers, demos, that sort of stuff. Okay. So this email is from one of our friends who says things, and by friends, I mean, not a friend, but you know, whatever, things to avoid in your personal statement. And we have 4 points. So let's see how they do. So step 1 or point 1 is to have a thesis statement. So far, agreed. You actually, like, this is right. You are writing a narrative essay, not an academic essay. So I'm like, okay, that's good. Like, you don't need a thesis. You do need it to make sense and kind of like draw a point for you, but you don't need a thesis for that. Although here they go off the rails. Spoiler alert, we know you want to go to law school. We don't need a thesis statement that takes the reader out of the story. Oh, actually, that is all right. Yeah, we do know you want to go to law school. A lot of people explicitly say, for all these reasons, I want to go to law school to do X. So it's like, yeah, no shit, you're applying to law school. Oh yeah, so one and oh, good tip. I like that. So good job, person. The next is being too generic / cliche. And so far, I'm loving that too, 2 and 0. And they continue. It's okay to want to help people and be a voice for the voiceless, but you need to get more specific than that. Who do you want to help? Why? What do you hope to do to help people? Okay, so I like the first part. Generic and cliche is a problem. I don't like the second part in terms of what you prompt them to do. Like, what do you hope to do? Why do you want to help people? Anyone can say that, which makes it not powerful. What is powerful is like, here's what I already do. Here's what I do in my day-to-day. In your essays, you don't want to be speculating. And saying what you plan to do it's not powerful because anyone can say it. It is so much more powerful to point to, I already do X. I say I'm going to help these people. Look, I already volunteered to do that. I've already worked in that field. It's so much more powerful. And you all have stuff. Occasionally when I say that, people get imposter syndrome. They're like, I have nothing to write about. False, you do. I guarantee you have stuff to write about. But overall, the meat of it, the idea, yes, being too generic and cliche is a problem. So 2 and 0. The next is being too much like a resume. I actually don't see this happen too often, but it would be bad. Like if someone just restates their resume, that is a bad essay. I don't tend to see those though. He writes though, it's totally okay to mention accomplishments and achievements, but there needs to be a reason behind it. You shouldn't mention accomplishments just for the sake of mentioning accomplishments. They should tie into wild law or another theme. Yeah, agreed. Just listing like I made Dean's List is pretty weak shit. Then the final one is only overcoming obstacles, which to be fair, we're at 3 and 0 so far. So In a similar manner, your essay shouldn't be only about overcoming obstacles. Everyone has overcome some obstacles. So how will those obstacles make you a better lawyer? Or how do they reaffirm why law school is best for you? Yeah, I'm more torn on that because overcoming obstacles is inherently active. It's not like passive, like here's what happened to me. When you're facing obstacles, I hate that. When people just say, like, here's the challenges I faced. Because it's like, okay, that sucks. You got a bad hand, but what did you do about it? But the overcoming is typically what people have done about it. So I tend to like those. I mean, it's not the only way to do it, but if you can legitimately show yourself taking action and kicking ass, I like those. Like I hate the trauma. Here's what happened to me. Woe is me. Life is awful. I've gone through the worst of it. Like those do suck. But when people talk, like when you say the word overcoming, that makes me actually sympathetic because I tend to like those because that tends to focus on here's how I've actually done things. So as a general rule, I would say that one's a mulligan. Like I don't. Yeah, I'll say 3-1. Your last tip I don't love, but the rest is pretty decent. So shout out to you. Your content is getting better. For those of you that are longtime listeners, this is the same email list that I tend to respond to just because I think it's funny. But that was actually, I'd say overall, a pretty useful one. Without examples, it's hard. And this is where admission stuff is really bad. You guys need to see examples. I do them on the podcast. And in fact, I should do more because it is application season. So if you have an essay, I don't have any in the queue, I will give free anonymous feedback. No, you are going on the podcast if you submit it. You don't submit it being like, hey, Ben, I want private feedback. Just send it back to me. That ain't happening unless you want to pay me. And even then, I don't really want to do it. I more so want to do it for content. So if you're like, I have a personal statement, I want feedback, feel free to shred it. Just don't say my name, send it in. I love those. They're super fun. Also, everyone loves you getting yelled at. I will note, I'm going to do it out of love. Like, it's not like, oh, you're a dummy. My personal statement, actually, should I do my personal statement? Maybe that'd be a good one to start with because I wrote one back in the day. Anyway, that'll be next week. We have a lot to do, lots of content ideas. I'm going to do the consulting recap. Maybe I'll start with that and then I'll do personal statements. I'm actually not sure how long that'll, because that might be like a 2-hour episode right there, just to go through all 25 people and really break down their situations. Anyway, that's a me problem. Thank you all for listening. It's an exciting time of year. So if you need anything, please reach out to ben@heyfuturelawyer.com. I read all emails. I respond to almost all of them, unless you are a dum-dum. I'm kidding though. You guys aren't dum-dums. Otherwise you wouldn't have listened all the way through. And yeah, I'll see you all next week. If you enjoyed what we talked about today or learned something new, please leave a review or a rating. It really does help us out and helps us reach more people. If you have a question or anything you want talked about in the world of LSAT or law school admissions, you can always email support@heyfuturelawyer.com to get it in the podcast agenda. Just put podcast in the subject and we will talk about it on the show. Alrighty, that's all we have for today. So I will see you all next time.